Quite honestly, I looked at some of this. I started looking this up, right? Like, hey, new topic. Let's do some, research. Let's make sure we know the fundamentals. I looked up GPT. Okay, read a few references, got there. Read up LLMs. Okay, got there. Then I said, well, what's going on here? How's this all work? So I looked it up, and I got somebody thought it was helpful content online. LLMs are a subset of generative AI that's multimodal. I had to look that up. What's multimodal? And that's kind of when I said, okay, you know what? Here's what I really need to know. Because after all, if you're trying to keep your floors clean, do you need to know how to design a vacuum cleaner, or do you need to know where the power switch is? So here's the power switch for AI, chat.openai.com. And part of the idea is that AI is a workflow enhancer. It is not a replacement for jobs yet. Now, if your job is to strictly enter data without interpretation or analysis, yeah, your job might be, you might be thinking about upskilling, let's just say. For the moment, at least, we don't see any time where it's going to be anything more than the computer in Star Trek. That's what I see, right? Really smart, knows lots more facts than you do or I do, but is probably not really going to be making independent decisions. And that's part of what you'll find, that you can't ask for an end result in AI and get it, get it in one and walk away happy. It's you got to work at it. So what can you do with AI? Here's some of the things I'm doing with it, right? Smart research. Let's just say I'm a quality manager. I want to know about a new paint technology that I'm considering or that I'm having to figure out how to measure. So I could do some smart research, really get a lot of information from a lot of places. Two tricks that I love: generating summaries from articles, generating articles from summaries, right? Huge. It can't write programs, but it can write chunks of programs, and it's really good at that. And now one of the ways to use AI is creative tasks and smart search, as I call it. Factors affect my credit limits with regard to property lending. Maybe I'm trying to expand and I want to see how much I can qualify for. So you can see, right, there's this start of 3 out of 10 items to look at. I'm not anywhere near a position where I can take the output of AI and use it. For one, I think there's a bit of a backlash against it. I'm starting to see people writing and saying, this was written by a real human, me, not AI, right? People are starting to preface posts that way. In any event, I wouldn't use it for that reason, but also too because full AI text can be boring and bland. But what I like about it is when you ask, well, what are the 5 key things, or what are the key things that you need to know about topic A? It will provide them for you, and you can feel free to add or delete or whatever, right? It's great first round. Vague prompts get mediocre results. This isn't a surprise. Help me write a recommendation letter. Well, it did it. But if you're not very specific, Don and I were talking about probability paths. And if you think about the roots of a tree and how you get these major subroots and then they split out into other roots, right? The best answer is somewhere on one of those roots. If you ask a vague question like this, the chances of you getting the best answer possible, very low. Type better prompts, you get better results. You'll get closer to your ideal probability path, we'll call it. I then said, let me write a reference letter for this person. I put in 3 sentences about how I might have known a mythical person named John Smith. So anyway, I got the first of more paragraphs than I would probably send for a reference letter. But it's always easier to cut down and combine than it is to create. So this is one of the ways I'm using it, not as a substitute for thinking. What does AI think are the major topics? AI, along the way, since it started last May into general usage, it has been adding features constantly. So now using DALL-E 3, you can get images from here, and you can do this many places, right? I was looking for measuring paint cans for variability in a manufacturing facility. If you will, the big picture here is the first one I got. And I'm thinking to myself, well, it's a really old factory, and I don't really understand how that measuring system works. I said, make it a factory, make it 5-gallon paint cans. And I tried to put people in it, right? Because most of people. So I want a man, a woman, and I wanted to do coworkers, and with only iterations. At one point you can't see here on this one, but the guy's wearing overalls and a tie. Okay, have a woman coworker, and clearly that's not a coworker. It looks like a manager and an employee, right? So I said, no, make the woman the manager. So I got this one here. I'm thinking to myself, okay, So a women manager is which she's wearing heels and carrying a briefcase in the shop. Like, obviously, it's not reality, but it's just funny and really understand now what some people have said that AI, at least the current versions, really have some outdated views of manufacturing, as well as women's roles in the workplace, and probably several other rants that we might talk about. I had an oh no moment. I was like, oh no, something's wrong here. But then I looked at the output and I started to realize why. It goes through and it explains that, hey, there's a whole class with lot sizes between 10,000 and 35,000. We're just slightly outside of that. So it had to make some assumptions. It had to say, well, here's the reality, or here's how I'm handling this, right? Just like I would say, well, I thought you meant, is it better than starting with nothing? I'd say yes, absolutely. And that's the point. Great first draft tool.
We're talking about a couple different publicly available AI programs. And the reality is that the top corporations that are leveraging AI are not using ChatGPT. Like McKinsey trained their own learning language model off of their own case studies. They're not including random Google searches and posts by grandma part of their learning model set. So these are some of the things that you want to keep in mind coming back to the four elements of generative AI. What data set are you pulling from? And so when we talk about something like ChatGPT, it doesn't have the precision scope for the task as a model that's trained on very specific data. But
Okay.
there are ways to still improve it, and we'll actually get to some prompting stuff shortly.
We agreed that there's way too much to talk about, and
Yeah.
to show would be difficult. And see, we're getting tight on time. We asked ChatGPT what's good use of a prompt, vague prompts versus improved prompts. But I wanted to get into some of the well, what's a prompt? What's the result? Here's another one: AI for CAPAs. Here's how a quality manager could use it. After all, it's not always writing complimentary letters to customers and organizations. Quality managers do more than that. Occasionally, they address like the dark side of transactions, including CAP, corrective action, preventive action. So I could have said, write a CAPA on this topic, right? Late shipment, incorrect part installed. I could have done anything like that. But I said, you know what? What information do you need? I got very specific. It was, again, 10 things with subpoints on here's some of the information we might need. Now, do we need all of it for that? Talk about crafting prompts. So I have a subscription to ChatGPT. And what happened last June or July, I think it was? I was talking to a buddy of mine, and we trade tech tips. He says, oh, are you using chat? And I said, well, I tried it when it was first released. Well, he said in the last month, it saved me at least 40 hours of time. I said, oh, really? I want to know more. So $20 a month, and well worth it for me. 3.5 is the free version. And by the way, we call it sessions intentionally because you create a prompt, you see the result, and then you lather, rinse, and repeat, changing things until you get a result. I actually find that I end up like, okay, I can live with this. What can my company do to prevent climate change? Now, I gave it no information. Doesn't know what my company does. So let's just take a quick look at this. And you can see here, so, okay, it's pulling up some of the stuff. I'll accomplish your goal. So, and then it's trying to follow. You guys can read this, right? I'm assuming you can.
Yes. Create a presentation outline for root cause analysis training.
Now, if I hit enter right now, I'll get something. If I do some other things, I'll get better answers. One is I could ask chat, hey, I want to do this. What things do you need from me to create a better out? What do you need to know? There's another thing that we could do. What else could we do to change this prompt a little bit to make it a little better? Because Don, we hit okay on this, and it's not going to do very much.
I think you should just hit okay.
Okay. And then we'll take a look at it and modify it. And that's why we call it a session here. So it's an expert in everything, apparently, right? Actually, it's part of the way I've got my ChatGPT programs. But in this case, because of stuff I've put in the past, let's call it, I was going to say assembly errors, employee errors.
4 elements that I think kind of make a good prompt. So the first is a clear objective. The second is contextual information. The third is format, and the fourth is messaging. So I'll kind of the objective is clear, right? There's a presentation regarding root cause analysis. Now we're getting some give it a time frame. Larry says give it a time frame. And then Larry also says ask it to create it in PowerPoint. Now you would need Copilot in order to do that. Larry also says ask it to focus on a beginner audience. And so now Larry is touching on some of the other pieces within this box, right? Contextual information, the format, that's really a question of format. Give it a time frame. Is it a 10-minute presentation? Is it a 500-word paper? Is it a one paragraph email? Telling it what to do in terms of format tends to give better results. Giving it contextual information. Do you maybe want to focus on beginners, for example? Do you want to do it for a company that's within a specific sector with, at Vicky Bakery? Maybe that's one industry versus like a software company. Now, the last one I want to touch on is messaging. Messaging are things like the tone. Do you want your presentation to be comedic? Do you want your presentation to be extremely professional? Do you want kind of a blend? How dense of information do you want? Like, what is the message that you actually want to wrap, right? We learn in marketing that there's a message that's within the content itself, whatever generative AI program benefits from. So let's see if we can add some of these elements into the prompt itself. So contextual information, I like beginner audience. Maybe what industry would you say that you're doing are you on site with?
Target a beginner audience. How about this? Consumer product goods sector. I just picked one that doesn't really matter.
Let's do it in the tone of Samuel L. Jackson or Dr. Deming. That's a good one as well.
Dr. Deming, but they might pick up Paul Deming, a general practitioner in Iowa. So you have to be very specific, right? W. Edwards Deming. Okay, so now, again, my goal was to just show you how to get started here, right? So now let's see here. So I said focus on data entry and human error issues, target a beginner audience. And so you can see some of the changes here, right? You feel free to do this on your own, right? This is free for 3.5. Then I said, oh, wait, use the words of the tone of W. Edwards Deming or, Donald Duck or whoever you want. It doesn't really matter. And the idea is if you know what Deming sounds like, then this is probably more meaningful to you. But anyway, you can see here some of the ideas, understand data input errors or so, right? So what's another way we could change this prompt a little bit? Give me examples in the form of stories for 3. Here again, I don't have to think about stories. And don't get me wrong, stories aren't the best I've ever heard, but they're pretty good. Sarah, new employee, was trying to figure out things the best she could, and she made a few mistakes. Oh, why? Because the job wasn't easy to do. Insufficient training and education is another one. So John was entering production data, and there were some issues as a result of interpretation of that data. Right? Same thing here. Distractions. Sounds like an allegory on the evils of multitasking. Marine Products Company. Just really just making things up. And you can see here now the stories are changed. They didn't just change consumer products to marine products, they actually changed other things. 2 people can ask the same prompt twice. They'll probably get unique answers. They won't get identical answers, that's for sure.
Midjourney, we'll just kind of go over the different iterations that I had. This is the prompt, right? I was creating an investor memo, and I wanted to the context here was Jerome Powell as Santa Claus. And so this is the first iterations that I got back. This is the exact prompt and the exact result. If you flip to the next page, because I had a little bit of photographic knowledge, I added in more context and more kind of messaging behind it, right? And so I got slightly better results. And keep in mind, each iteration, yep, spelling error as well, and it figured it out. Each iteration got a little bit better. So I said, you know what, just redo. It gave me 4 more. Midjourney, actually all of them give you the opportunity to have it just regenerate another set of responses if you don't like it at all. And from here I said, you know what? Version 3 is pretty close to what I have in my mind. Iterate the prompts over time, right? And it's this concept that I call quality through quantity, which is maybe a little bit different from kind of the way that a lot of you guys may think, right? Quality over quantity. Well, the reality is, let's flip that on its head. Let's actually work on quantity, implement the 4 different kind of elements of that make a good prompt, and I think you'll be amazed.
And here are some of the things that you could do very easily. Create a worksheet for analysis in the shop. Draft a response to a customer, offer advice, right? Here's ways that I use this every day. Give me 3 thought-provoking questions on this topic. This is when I was writing posts for LinkedIn in my ASQ. So, I got that. When I was trying to promote this webinar, give me 5 email subject lines. And so what I find is I don't like any one of them. I like parts of 2 or 3 of them and end up mashing them together in my own way. So here's another one that I love. And again, I don't accept any one of these. I haven't yet anyway. I do take a little bit from this one and that one and then combine them together. So, just things like that. So tiny bit more. So it's changing every day. This was just yesterday in Google Slides. That offered to create an image for me with AI. You're using AI already. Here are 3 ways I use it, and there are so many more. A language reactor, if you're trying to learn a language, it's great, especially at YouTube and Netflix. It provides great translations. It's got an AI. You can get homework and have conversations with it. Otter AI, my transcription software, love it. Use it all the time. It can pull out action items from a meeting or a meeting transcript. Believe me, that comes in handy. Rather than listening to a 2-hour meeting and remembering to write them all down, we can use stuff like that. Canva is out doing things as well. So a lot of stuff you can use here, right? I mean, is there an industry that AI is not touching?
There are certain ones that are far enough away in terms of like, if I need to make a career pivot now, where can I hide out? Like nursing is a big one, for example. The reality is every industry is going to be touched by it in one form or another.
And mostly for the good, but the thing is, like, any tool can be used for good or evil, and that's always the challenge, right? So I think at the end of the day, you have to look at this. Look at the first line here, iterate until you get results you like, and look at the last line. Don't like what you see? Check back in a few months, because it's really doing that. By the way, you've been using AI for years without realizing it, and Don and I were talking yesterday about CAPTCHAs when you're trying to validate that you're a human and not some sort of bot. And we'll hang out on one of these somewhere. So let's see.